So picture this. It's the early 1970s, and a really strange but incredibly powerful idea is about to be born. But not in some lab, in the Himalayas. They called it the peace bomb. And this is really the story of how one person's search for meaning ended up carrying this explosive idea all the way across the world, right into the heart of a very divided America.
This quote right here, it kind of drops us right into the middle of our story with Joan, the young woman at the center of all this. It just perfectly captures the whole paradox of her journey, a journey that would end not with some destructive bang, but with the quiet explosion of a life-altering purpose.
Okay, so to really get what this peace bomb is all about, we've got to go back. We have to understand the world that it came from. I mean, what would drive someone like Joan to just leave everything behind, searching for an answer to a question she didn't even really know how to ask yet?
America in the late 60s, it was a place of total contradictions. On one hand, you had this vibrant explosion of idealism, of counterculture. But on the other, there was this deep, deep despair. The nation was being torn apart by the Vietnam War, by struggles for civil rights. And underneath all that, for so many young people, there's just this profound spiritual emptiness, a feeling that all the old answers just didn't work anymore.
And this is the world Joan finds herself in. Like a lot of people in her generation, she felt this deep disillusionment. But her journey didn't start with some clear, well-defined goal. Nope, for her it started with this deep, nagging feeling that something was fundamentally wrong and that the answers definitely weren't at home. And that confusion, that became the fuel for a journey outward that would, believe it or not, ultimately lead her inward.
So what does she do? She leaves. Driven by this powerful feeling, Joan leaves America behind and sets off on what was known as the Hippie Trail, an epic, overland adventure that thousands of young Westerners took, all heading east, all searching for something more.
And look, we've got to be clear, this wasn't some vacation. This was an odyssey. She starts out in the counterculture hubs of Europe, London, Amsterdam. Then she pushes east through these ancient landscapes of Turkey, Iran, and Afghanistan. And with every single border she crossed, with every new culture she experienced, this feeling just got stronger and stronger. An intuition that she was getting closer to something. She had no idea what it was, but the pull was absolutely undeniable.
And then you get one of those moments, pure chance or maybe destiny. In this little restaurant in Afghanistan, of all places, she bumps into some English travelers. They get to talking, and they tell her about a young master they just met in India, a 12-year-old boy who they said had this just extraordinary wisdom and sense of peace about him. And that one conversation, it gave her vague, rambling search a laser-sharp focus.
And this quote, it just nails that moment, doesn't it? It wasn't some big thunderclap from the heavens. It was a whisper in a crowded room, a gentle nudge that completely reoriented her entire internal compass. Suddenly, her destination wasn't just the East anymore. It was Dehradun, India. She knew she had to find this boy. So after thousands upon thousands of miles, Joan finally makes it. She's in India. She had reached the threshold she'd been unknowingly seeking this whole time.
The year is 1970. She's in a city called Dehradun, nestled right there in the foothills of the Himalayas. And it's here that she finally comes face to face with the object of her incredibly intense quest, the young guru Prem Rawat.
Seriously, just try to put yourself in her shoes for a second. Imagine waiting on that porch after all that time, your heart just pounding. And when the boy finally appears, there are no big, elaborate greetings. Just a single direct question that cuts through absolutely everything. What do you want?
And after all that, after crossing half the world, her answer was just as direct, just as pure. It was the simple, profound truth that had pushed her across continents. Not enlightenment, not wisdom, not even adventure. Just, I want peace. This was the very core of her being, finally spoken out loud.
So, that first meeting? That was the spark. But the real explosion was still to come. In November of 1970, Joan would witness a public declaration in Delhi that would finally give her newfound purpose and name and a mission.
Now, let's talk about that name for a second. Peace Bomb. I mean, wow. Think about the time. The whole world was living under the constant fear of the atomic bomb. So to call this message a peace bomb was an incredibly radical, deliberate choice. It was meant to completely redefine power, not as some force of external destruction, but as an explosion of internal peace.
So what was the peace bomb, really? At its heart, it was a promise a declaration to establish peace in the world. But here's the twist. This had nothing to do with politics or treaties. Its foundation was the radical idea that global peace can only ever begin with the direct, personal experience of peace inside each and every individual.
And for Joan, hearing this, it was like everything just clicked into place. This was it. These core ideas that peace starts within, that it's for everyone, transcending all boundaries, and that it's a real, tangible experience you can actually be taught to access, this resonated so deeply with her that it became her new mission in life. And just like that, everything changed for her. Armed with this profound new understanding, she was no longer just a seeker. She was now an emissary, absolutely convinced that this message was desperately needed back in her own turbulent homeland.
And man, did she move fast. Just look at this timeline. She gets back to the US in April 1971 and immediately starts this relentless campaign of sending telegrams pleading for him to come to the West. And unbelievably, it works. Just 3 months later, in July, he arrives for his very first event in Los Angeles.
And you've got to understand, these weren't just polite, please come visit telegrams. They were passionate. They were urgent. They were filled with this conviction that America was starving for exactly this message. Her persistence was totally fueled by this unshakable belief that she had found the cure for the very disillusionment that she herself had fled from.
And the result? It was immediate. It was overwhelming. Her efforts paid off spectacularly. Those first events weren't just well attended, they were overflowing. This quote says it all, doesn't it? People literally dripping from the rafters. It just captures the raw, desperate hunger for a message of peace in the West at that time.
And it just goes to show you, right? The incredible power of one single person who is completely on fire with a purpose. Joan's passionate, tireless work was literally the bridge that carried this profound personal experience from the East and transformed it into a brand new movement for a Western audience. Which kind of brings us full circle, back to that central, fascinating question. The story of Joan and the Peace Bomb leaves us with this powerful paradox. It really challenges our normal ideas about how change happens, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the most powerful explosions aren't the ones we see, but the ones that happen quietly, inside the human heart.